I'm going to go ahead and declare this meeting declare a quorum of 7 members present. We'll start the workshop session. C1, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to the 2016 TASB Convention. Dr. Ely?
Thank you, Dr. Yokin. The first item is just a reflection on the 2016 TASB Convention. All 7 board members were in attendance between September the 23rd and 25th. Just an opportunity for any of the board members to discuss maybe some of the things they saw or pique their interest, or just any conversation resulting at the time that you went and received your board training.
Mr. Harris?
Thanks for that. Well, I've alluded to in the past, one of the things that really struck me, and it was the crucial conversations talk that at least 3 of us were in. It was a really good talk, and I think they had an option for additional training we might want to explore. And let me put a big asterisk by that. Currently, I think it's a minimum of a 2-day training. Is that right? Okay, he's shaking his head. So it may be something we want to look at, skimming the book instead of going to a 2-day training. But some of the points were really good, and it particularly given some of the crucial conversations we've recently been through, and the role of emotional reaction and how that can impact the course of a conversation about important issues, not only to us, but also to the entire community, and how we might not get the best result if we're not aware of it and mindful of ways to deal with those influences on us. So I think it's something maybe worth talking about further, and the other folks can weigh in too if they saw the same value. And then the other presentation I saw that I'll say stuck out to me was one on the overall economy, and it was a kind of a 30,000-foot view of global economy, U.S. economy, much more than anything Texas or Bryan College Station related. And it basically was, we've been through good times and bad times before, and we will again. That's what I took away from it. I mean, it was, you know, I don't want to.
Encouraging that good will come back.
Right. And that's, you know, he had a bunch of statistics, as you would expect. He was one of the high-end paid guys that came in to give the talk. You know, so he had a bunch of statistics about, well, every 5 years we have at least a 10% market correction, every 10 years at least a 20%, all that kind of stuff. But again, what I took away from it was things are going to go up and down over time, and it's all going to work out because we have a good system and solid fundamentals in place. So there you have it.
Anyone else? Mr. Schaefer?
The commissioner was very, it probably was my best session. Very upbeat, not what one would expect. It was more like he was talking to us and not talking at us, and it was a lot of good thoughts, very engaging, very, very uplifting.
Good.
We go to this thing obviously every year since I've been here, and every now and then you hit a session that really says something. I know a number of us were in the session on the school ratings that are getting ready to come out, and how fundamentally flawed that system is in terms of what is likely to give us our letter grades by school, and how that process has worked in other states, having started specifically in Florida, and what some of the issues that they ran into were as they did that. So I think it will be good for us to be mindful of the fact that this is coming, whether we like it or not, and what are the ramifications of these different rating systems that we're going to be given. The more interesting thing that I think that I took from that is those ratings haven't, in any place though they've been implemented, how those ratings are created has not remained stable over time. Whoever's in charge of it at the government level walks in and every year or two just changes the percentages to be whatever they want it to be, to make sure that the schools they think should be A's are A's, and on and on. And needless to say, a moving bar is hard when you're going to be rated. So I think it's going to be important for us whether we, like historically, obviously, we've pulled outstanding ratings as a district across the board on almost anything that we've been rated on. But I think it's going to be to keep in mind that good ratings or bad ratings, I mean, they change from year to year, and understanding, I guess, much more important. I walked out of there, I guess, being glad that we are a leader in community-based accountability, and that everything that we have to show for people that live within our district is up online right now. And they can take a look at anything they want across any school they want to see what those results are. And so regardless of what they come down with from a grading perspective, we're about as transparent as it gets. And perhaps I understand that not all school districts are that way. I think the other thing I took away, having attended another 3 sessions, is if anything, I always walk away more proud of our district from that conference, and happy I'm on school board at College Station ISD, as opposed to a lot of the issues that a lot of other places are dealing with. And hearing how different boards have handled things, the issues that they deal with, and some of the unique stuff, it's always a breathe a deep sigh of relief that we're not going through what a lot of other districts are going through in terms of the kinds of issues that they face. So we're very fortunate. And I think sometimes, it's good to go into that thing every year because you possibly lose sight of how good we really have it here and about every respect until you go there, and then all of a sudden you realize that we're actually sitting in really, really good shape compared to most school districts around the state. So.
The only thing I would add to that is it seemed like, as he was talking about the different rating systems, that perhaps because we have been such a leader in community accountability, we might need to really ensure before those other ratings come out that the community understands how we rate ourselves and how thorough our community accountability is, so that they don't get surprised on something that we can't control. I mean, because we don't really know it's going to be a pop quiz, and you don't really know what the subject matter is. It's anything that the professor has talked about in the last, 15 weeks or something. And so I think that there might be some benefit to ensuring that the community understands how we rate ourselves, even though this will happen, but just so that that's better understood, so we're not trying to explain it once those ratings hit, because I think then you lose focus. And one of the things I think we have learned here recently is that we need to be sure that the baseline communication is clear before we start getting into anything that might cause concern.
Being proactive makes it not sound like an excuse after the fact, and it also tells people not to get too enthralled when we have a bunch of A's, because those ratings we could literally not change from one year to the next at all in terms of our output. I mean, hopefully we're always getting better, and then all of a sudden what was an A now becomes a B because somebody made the decision to count something a certain percentage and something a different percentage, and all of a sudden we've got a different grade. So cautious on the high end and cautious on the low end.
Right. Just making sure that we have enough people that can talk intelligently about it at each one of our campuses, so that it's not an issue.
Yep.
So that was John Tanner's that you went to.
Yep.
I'm guessing anybody else there as well? Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
He was there. Quinn was there also.
There, the presentation that I went to that I enjoyed the most was the UIL redistricting, I learned how that all works, which was pretty interesting. It's a moving target, is what I learned. And so we don't know from every couple of years if you're going to fall in 5A or 6A, and everything is self-reported based on October numbers, I guess. And then a lot of questions in that seminar about kids that are transferring and playing sports, and what's legal and what's not legal. And what I learned is nobody's watching that. It has to be reported. It's usually the parent of the previous starting player who got his position taken over by another player that reports it, and that's how they learn it. But anyway, it was a very interactive conference, and I was fascinated by it.
I had a little bit different experience than y'all, I believe. The first day I was for 7 hours in a seminar for new board members.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah. You're very welcome. It was really different. There's probably a few hundred of us in there, but most had been elected in the last 3 or 4 weeks. So it was a little odd. There was a lot of. It wasn't remedial, because certainly I picked up on a lot, but for 7 hours, I don't know how much bang for my buck I got. And then I'll save the next seminar I went to for you two, because I believe y'all enjoyed it more than I did, and I was in there with y'all. But I spent the rest of the time caucusing and delegating and voting, and well, thank you. I appreciate that. Which I'm already concerned about next year, as it appears there will be no new. I have a plan. I spent a lot of time on Sunday developing a plan for how I'm not doing that again next year. We'll see.
You got fed, didn't you?
I did get fed. They fed
There
us
you go.
well. Fed us well. But it really was. It was a good time, and it was. I hate to say it was good to be there, as Dr. Wesson said, and you're talking to people from other districts and you're hearing their stories, and you really are sitting there going, wow, we've got it good. Our kids have it good, and just selfishly as board members, we've got pretty good. So.
Okay, the seminar he didn't like was the one that I loved. There's a little East Texas school who has made a decision to in no way focus on the STAR test, much like we have. Only she goes as far as she will not discuss it. They will look at the scores, they will report the scores, but she will not speak to the press about it. She will not speak to the children about it. It is another day, it's another test. They don't have parties, they don't have little things, notes that go home and say, you need to feed your child well, we're having a test tomorrow. She hopes that they feed their children well every day, and that they take a test every day well, and that this is just another test in a day of school, and that's how they treat it. And she's done some things and put some things in place that she feels like have been taking hold there, parents appreciate it, and that has spread to other districts around her. I just really appreciated.
I appreciate that you've done in 90 seconds, which it took her 50 minutes.
I realize that. I recognize that. She had a little East Texas draw, okay? She is a great, she is a great lady, and I was so impressed with the fact that, she took what we're doing, community-based accountability, and took it, I think, one step further to say, this is just one piece of that whole picture, and we're not going to make a big deal out of it. And we're not going to stress these kids out, and we're not going to talk about it. And the kids shouldn't feel any different than they're going home, and we should be doing our jobs, where they're taking that test, and that they're doing well on it no matter what. And they've gone back to teaching, using, and you know what, I wrote this down, I'm sorry I don't have my notes, but, using things that I know we use. I've heard, there's those little acronyms that go in and out my brain sometimes, but that we use, and that's what they focus on. And she's made it. She doesn't want to hear about it. She doesn't want to hear her teachers talking about it. So I thought that was awesome. I do think that the Crucial Conversations be something for us. I know that we already got our training set for January, but maybe later in the year we could perhaps, if we wanted to, look at that, because I really do think that I think it would help you not only here on the board, but it could help us in everyday life. It's really what I was thinking. So they did a nice job of presenting and doing some things that I perhaps missed one part of it, but that people felt like they had gotten a lot out of it. It was an 1.5-hour session.
Anybody else?
I'd like to follow up on just two things that were discussed here. Talking about the Commissioner of Education, McGrath. He is, I think, done a tremendous job since being appointed to being the commissioner. He is he's a self-made individual. He's a product of public schools, Garland ISD, Garland High School. He's had one spectacularly successful software business and one spectacularly bad failure of a software business, and he served 4.5 years on the Dallas Independent School District Board of Trustees. And I think all of those things I mentioned have an impact on him and his leadership style. He's been going around the state and visiting with people. He's already been to our Region Service Center to visit with us. And he's meeting with people, and he is wanting to engage in conversation about what's best for the 5.2, 5.3 million school children in Texas. And he's not afraid to think differently and ask questions and have these conversations. He's doing something that, a couple things that haven't really seen done much. One is he has now a deputy commissioner position that is all about teacher preparation, teacher induction, and teacher performance. And he hired a teacher from the classroom to that position. That is something that is really very, very important to him, and so he has put his money where his mouth is in regards to that, supporting our teachers. I think that says a lot about his leadership style, and he's really working to change the bureaucratic nature of a governmental regulatory agency to one of service and helping the local school districts. And that's a tough thing to do, because it is obviously TEA has existed in that frame for so long, but he's really working on that. And I think he has some good ideas in regards to accountability, especially assessment, and trying to turn assessment on its head and be more proactive and computer adaptive and using multiple times throughout the year to inform instruction. So what he's able to get accomplished throughout this legislative session and future sessions will remain to be seen, but I certainly appreciate his willingness to talk and listen to people all across the state. The second thing is I'd like to follow up on John Tanner, but it looks like 4 of y'all went to. A number of us on our cabinet have been to see him in one place or the other in the work that he does through his company, Test Sense. And we've been able to bring some of this back with our leadership team. In fact, talk with our folks about the upcoming A through F system and how it's based on a STAR test that is not a criterion reference test. It's not based on how well you master the standards. It's designed to rank order students. And as such, it very much fails as a way to rate or assess how well a particular classroom, campus, or school district is doing. So we've talked about A through F and what it could portend for College Station ISD and our campuses, and we're making the conscious decision to not be complicit in it. And so we're going to start that conversation now that we've gone past what we've been working on the last month, and start talking a lot more with the board and the community about the STAR test, the rank order nature of the test, and start talking about A through F system that'll be coming later on this year. So be looking for more of that stuff coming from us in the very near future.
Good. Anything else? Okay, we'll move on to C2, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to moving the Management Oversight Workshop for Human Resources from November 1st, 2016 to a new date. Dr. Ely.
Thank you, Dr. Yoder. This is the 5th straight week that we have met as a board of trustees. And it occurs to me that the Management Oversight Workshop for Human Resources that were scheduled is a little bit over 2 weeks from now. Just wanted to throw it out to the board. You guys wanted to have a conversation in regards to that. We want to go ahead and continue to move forward with that. We have met a lot over the last month or five weeks or so. If it is the board's pleasure, we can move it a little later in the month or December or another time. And if there's anything else that you want to talk to in regards to that, just want to throw that out.
Some of the other options that we might have is, do we need to have a kind of mini team of 8 just to kind of regroup after the last month, if we want to leave it on that date, or do we want to leave that topic there? I mean, one of the things that becomes difficult is when you are so intense on one topic, sometimes you don't get the opportunity to really, after you've reflected on it, think about, okay, what do we need to, what are things that perhaps we as a team of 8 need to do differently, or things that we need to work on? So that's just another option as well. Or if we want to go ahead and talk about the management oversight workshop, it's up for discussion. Obviously, we do get into the point where we have something the 1st of January with our the training, and then we also have the complication of the holidays coming up. So any thoughts on that?
I have a thought. I really do think it would be important to us to, even if we spent an hour and a half or so, to do some team building for a team of 8. I think it would be helpful, given that we have been through, I just think it gives us a place to recalibrate, as you like to use. And the other thing, too, is that the district, too, has been working so diligently on what they've been doing, that maybe giving them an extra little bit of time, too, as well, and let them educate the children a little bit instead of us at this time would be perhaps helpful to them, too. I don't know how you, I know you'll be ready either way. I know how y'all are. I know, right? But those are my thoughts and mine alone.
I tend to agree with that. I think those are good points, and don't have a whole lot to add to them other than I agree.
I've got that time blocked off, so, I mean, I concur. I mean, I think we could probably take some time to talk about processes and how things have worked, and give them a break, and just let Clark show up and handle that however we think is best at that point in time. But and obviously we'll have to do this board oversight shop at some point, but whether that's a month from then or early next year, either way, I don't know what our requirements are. I know we have to do 2 of those a year or something like that, but so I'm more than game for that. I think it seems very reasonable.
Others?
Yeah, again, I think that's fine. It's on the calendar. I'm good with it.
It sounds like some team building on the 1st
Right, sounds good.
at a time and place to be determined. We have a time on that?
We do have a time. I think it's 4.
Yeah, I think,
That still works for
I
us.
think we should keep it to where people have blocked it off,
Okay.
unless someone has because
4
we
to
have it
6.
from 4 to 6. And then I would just make the suggestion that perhaps we put the management oversight workshop first part of next year and do 2 of them in the spring, because we're going to run out of year with doing this, and then having the Thanksgiving holidays and then the Christmas holidays.
Okay. So management oversight workshop sometime after the 1st of the calendar year.
Is that all right with everyone? Okay.
Absolutely.
Right. Consideration, discussion, and possible action related to November 2013 and November 2015 bond update. Dr. Ely.
Thank you, Dr. Yokin, members of the board. As you know, we have quite a lot going on in the school district in regards to building, in regards to our last 2 bond issues that were passed in November of 2013 and November of 2015. We'd like to come every 3 or 4 months or so and visit with you kind of about what's going on in regards to those projects. This will be less on the pictures and progress of the actual projects and more drilling down into some more of the numbers and what we're doing and what's kind of upcoming. So John Hall, Executive Director for Facilities, is here to lead us through where we are in both of those bond projects. Mr. Hall?
Thank you, Dr. Ely. Dr. Yokin, I do have a brief PowerPoint. I'll
Yeah.
try to blast through it pretty quickly. And then we have a couple of data sheets to spread out on the tables and take a look at. So I'll get right on it here. Got the 2013. Theo's got, why don't you go ahead and hand that? So first I'll be going over the 2013 bond update. As a reminder, that passed in November of 2013 for $83.5 million. Recommendations were made by the Long Range Educational Planning Committee at that time. Construction projects included in the 2013 bond are listed, as you see there. School safety upgrades, which is basically security vestibules, got our Center for Alternative Learning project, elementary number 9, some renovations, purchasing warehouse, repurpose current warehouse and purchasing building, and $12 million worth of deferred maintenance. We also picked up some other stuff for technology, buses and vehicles, and land acquisition in those amounts. So in 2013, what we've completed so far is Spring Creek Elementary School, school safety upgrades, which are the security vestibules, some renovation work over at the A&M Consolidated High School. And I think most recently, since the last time I gave you all an update, we finished up the purchasing warehouse in College View High School as well. So quick picture of the purchasing warehouse. I think most of us have seen that. Mark Pantel is in there and happy. And here's an interior shot of College View High School, which we were proud to open up for the school year just a few months ago. 2013 bond construction projects completed already also include a whole litany of deferred maintenance projects. We'll be talking in a little more depth in the handouts there. But they include work all across the district for Rock Prairie Elementary School, Creek View, South Knoll. We did quite a bit of work over College Station Middle School for the grounds and underneath that building. Put on a new sports court, wood floor at Consolidated High School. And several HVAC units across the district we've replaced, old ones that were dying. And there's some of the campuses, just a couple of them that we've made fairly significant HVAC upgrades on. Construction projects ongoing. We really just have one of them that's, I'll say, ongoing. And that's code for what's in construction right now. And that's the new server room project that we just approved last month. We're just getting off and running on that one. And the only one left really that's a construction project that I'd call upcoming, that's the one that I'm going to be bringing to you in November. And that's the rest of the renovation of the warehouse and purchasing building project. Basically, that's the big back section of this admin building that we're going to be doing the new board room and a bunch of office space in the back of that warehouse. So that should be ready for November. So pushing through 2015 bond general election was a little bit bigger, passed in November of 2015 for $135.9 million. Included recommendations made by the Planning for Growth Committee. Construction projects included in that bond were intermediate school number 3, middle school number 3, elementary school number 10. So this one was a little more school heavy. We did have some renovations planned in there for intermediate and middle school campuses, as well as $5.2 million worth of deferred maintenance. And once again, we picked up some other items in there. We picked up technology, buses and vehicles, and land acquisition in these amounts. So we really just have one project completed so far from the 2015 bond package, and that was the AMCMS and Oakwood renovations, where we did a locker room addition, kind of did a facelift on the front of Oakwood, and some other stuff on the interior of the building, a couple little quick pictures of that. And we just have one construction project ongoing, albeit a pretty good size one. That's the intermediate school number 3, which is a little over $38 million worth of project there. Still have a lot of the 2015 bond ahead of us. What's coming up a little bit later tonight is middle school number 3, which, by the way, is the second biggest project in CSISD history. Only one bigger, I guess, was the College Station High School project. So, but that is on the agenda for later tonight. One's coming up down the road a little further is elementary school number 10, which will be about mid-spring of 2017. We will be picking up some renovations to Cypress Grove and Oakwood Intermediate Schools to get ready for the fall of 17. We'll be doing that work in the summer, bringing it to you sometime this spring. And then we'll be doing the renovations to the middle schools the following summer. That'll give us one more year to finish construction in the middle school before we impact the two campuses that are just jam-packed right now. And then once again, we have just quite a few deferred maintenance projects kind of spread out across the whole school district. So with that said, we do have some budget summary sheets that we've passed out there. And what I can do is, let's see, we just talk those over. Would it help if I pull them up on the screen here, or I'll just do this? When we start with the 2013 bond, that's the first big sheet you've got in front of you there. So you can see kind of how, let me scroll that back just a little bit. Okay, so the way I've got this sheet put together is the bright yellow line at the top of the page. That's our overall bond budget, so listed left to right. By the citizens of College Station there per project. So, and you can see as they drop down, you've got all the detail, hopefully, that you want for this round. Mr. Rouse has got a lot more if we need to dig deeper in the well, so to speak. But you can see, for instance, school safety upgrades started off as a $3.9 million project. We ended up shifting some of that money over to technology. You can see some of the PA systems. We shifted that over to Mr. Hutchison, which you can see kind of on the far right, which is buses, technology, land. We also transferred over some deferred maintenance for proximity locks over to the deferred maintenance line item there, so we could pick that up separately. And you can see as we drop all the way down the line, the $1,398,000 was the GMP that y'all approved for that project, and it drops all the way down to, you can see what we saved on that project was about $126,000. And so really we can go through all of those column lines if you'd like. I will say this, we've kind of color-coded it to make it a little bit easier to understand, in that the blue columns are the projects that we've completed at this point. So I'll say in addition to what you see on this page, which are the savings at the bottom of the page, as we close those projects out and get our final change orders from our contractor, we usually realize even more savings that we pull back into the game too. So you can see the green column there is for the server room. That's one that's in progress right now. We're just getting started, and the pink column is for the warehouse project that we haven't brought to you yet. You can see at the top what we've got budgeted. Just mentioned that I think last month as I pitched the server room project, and then we go all the way to the right of the page there. So, do I need to drill into any of these any deeper, or should we go on to deferred maintenance?
I guess the only thing I would point out is that the money savings for each one of those projects, once those are closed out, that amount will probably be moved over to deferred maintenance.
Yes, ma'am. If you see on the far right where it says at the far right corner on the bottom, the $662,227, generally speaking, that money is then pulled back over to either deferred maintenance projects or in some cases, if we're waiting to get a GMP, for instance, for this warehouse, we've got some concerns that might go a little bit over what we've got budgeted, then we'll pick up the balance with those savings at that time as well.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Okay, so the second page is, if you want to drill in just a little bit, is the 2013. There we go. Deferred maintenance. And I do have Theo Rouse with me here too. If the questions get too tough, I'll defer to my subject matter expert here. But you can see once again we start off with a budget of $12 million. We did add the proximity locks to $120,000. It was over on the school safety. We slid that over. So really we started with about $12 million, $120,000 for the deferred maintenance. And you can see kind of broken out by campus there. We went through Consolidated High School. We picked up the gym vestibule, renovated a lot of locker rooms. We did, yes, sir. And even just recently, we added 4 HVAC units to replace on the roof for $316,000. So as we go all the way down through that, you can see how we like to track it. Every project, you see what the remaining budget is all the way down through the list, down to the bottom that we are holding $1,570,000 left. That's the remaining balance of the deferred maintenance money that we had from the original $12 million. So we need to dig into any of those tighter. Okay.
Any questions?
Okay, so next sheet you should have is the 2015 bond. And you can see we've got a whole lot less blue columns on that. We really just have the one completed, and that's the Oakwood facade and the AMCMS locker room addition. The big project on the far left in the green column, which is, of course, work still in progress, is intermediate school number 3, which, what would you say, Theo? We're about 40% complete on that approximately. So that is tracking right on schedule, I'm proud to say. So we'll be able to open that up in the fall of 2017. Get our staff in a little bit earlier than that. So you can see the pink columns. The middle school number 3, that'll turn to green right after tonight, after we get it approved. But that is looking like we're going to, and we did land that one. It's within budget. We're not going to have any savings for that. So probably would like to note a little bit of question possibly on the Oakwood facade and AMCMS locker room additions. We've added a little block of information on the far right there to explain how we funded that. The original budget for that project was $1,911,500. That was, let me scroll up just a little bit. That was all part of the $3,630,000 for the renovations to the current intermediate and middle schools. So splitting those two apart, the Oakwood and AMCMS piece was about $1,911,000. We increased our time quite a bit on that. We basically cut it in half and then some, and we also picked up some additional scope on that as well. So you can see where the additional funding came from is in that little block of information to your right there. We did pick up the $2,270,000 that we were fortunate enough to obtain from the intermediate number 3, which had already bid out. So we used that savings to help out with the Oakwood AMCMS. And we also picked up some savings from the 2013 bond from closeout savings that we had as Spring Creek Elementary, College Station Middle School, and some deferred maintenance that we picked up at AMCMS. It was always identified. So that was a little bit of a hodgepodge project. We kind of brought together a couple of different funding sources to land it, but we did, and very aggressive construction schedule. We were able to. I'll say we finished it. It was an ugly finish, but we finished it. We still got a couple of little odds and ends we were chasing, but we did get our certificate of occupancy from the city and get everybody moved into it. So all things considered, I'm calling that a big win for us.
Very aggressive.
And then you can see as we extend on to the right there, we got a couple other projects. We got elementary number 10. Of course, we haven't brought to you yet. Flexible learning at the intermediates and the middle schools. We'll still be processing that. And some more deferred maintenance. So I do have another deferred maintenance sheet, but is there any other questions on this one before we go?
I have a question. If you compare that yellow, I guess that's a row, the number on the far right
Yes.
with the number at the bottom of your totals, keep going down.
Like this one?
No, go right here.
Oh, sorry. Scroll down. There we go.
That's the same as one.
7,211,000.
Oh, yeah, same number. How's that going to work? That-
Here's the box.
Okay, so that's what that is. Okay.
It's the addition.
That's it. No, he's got it.
1,300,000 that we pulled over from the 2013
Got it.
bond package. So that's what throws the numbers off a little bit. It added
See.
just a little bit. So good.
Can you explain why the project contingency is so much greater for intermediate school number 3 than it is for the other schools? So the contingency is $1.3 million for intermediate school number 3, but it's capped at 400 and 467 for the next two schools.
We had the luxury of a little bit more money on intermediate school number 3.
Okay.
I would have liked the project contingency on middle school number 3 to be a little bit more. But even with bumping that to what was a little more comfortable for us,
Right.
intermediate school number 3, we still had the $2,270,000 left over to use for others. So
Okay.
really, the $1,300,000 for the project contingency is where I wish.
It's just kind of the way we're accounting for it, and the truth is, it kind of gets pushed across all projects, for lack of a better way of putting it.
True.
Okay.
True. So, like I say, I wish the project contingency for middle school number 3 were a little bit more. But also, you see on middle school number 3, the city infrastructure costs, we bumped that up a couple of $100,000 as well. So it doesn't totally balance it out, but they like a little bit more of our participation in that. So,
Good deal. Thank you.
yes, sir. So can I go on to deferred maintenance just briefly then? Do we want to catch that quickly? Pretty straightforward. This not much to this. We got $5.2 million budgeted for the deferred maintenance. We really only tapped it once, and that's the Pebble Creek, Southwood Valley, South Knoll project that we did this past summer that we've completed for $1,684,000. So really what we're doing is we're trying to use up all the deferred maintenance money first for 2013, generally speaking. This one was big enough that we had to carry it on as summer 2013. Does that make sense to everyone? And with that, I'd open it up for any other questions or comments.
Thank you for your work and your service and keeping us under budget and on time. We appreciate it. You know, even if it's ugly, we appreciate you getting it done.
It truly is a remarkable job you guys do, and, I know we've told you that in some of the management oversight meetings that we've had, but you guys handle a lot of different projects, go in a lot of different directions, and I can tell you that you're always incredibly upfront when you think you're running over or running behind, but that doesn't happen very often, and I know as a board, we appreciate the heads up, and you always seem to make it work in the long run, and you guys are very much appreciated, so just know that from our perspective. So
Thank you. I owe most of it to Theo Rouse here. I get the luxury of sitting around on the sideline letting him carry all the heavy weight for us there. So,
well, you're doing a good job of that. So
Keep doing it. It's working.
With that, we'll move to C4, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to school resource officer agreements for 2016-17 and future years. Dr. Ely.
Thank you, Dr. Yokin. College Station ISD has worked with the College Station Police Department for approximately 20 years with a series of agreements to provide school resource officers to work in College Station ISD campuses to primarily act in a community building role and a very proactive role to work with students and families in our community. Our most recent agreement was a 3-year agreement, which ended at the end of this fiscal year. So for the city, that would have been September 30th. The city has come to us and wanting to go a different direction regarding SROs. This is also in Mr. Hall's bailiwick with school safety. He oversees the SRO program from the College Station ISD's point of view. So he's going to talk with us briefly tonight about where we are with our current agreement, a transition year agreement with the City of College Station, and where we think we're going to be going moving forward for SRO services. So with that, Mr. Hall.
thank you, Dr. Ely, Dr. Yokin, members of the board. Before I get started, I would like to make one introduction. The distinguished-looking gentleman up here on the front row is Chief Deputy Sheriff Jim Stewart with Brazos County Sheriff's Office. So,
good evening.
I may have to lean on him if I don't have my numbers exactly right. He's going to be watching me close tonight. So this is a presentation about our school resource officers and our situation. So just to give you just a brief background on this, as Dr. Ely mentioned, the College Station Police Department has been providing this service to CSISD for as long as anyone can remember. I put down at least 20 years. That was as long as anyone else. I think Carrie Horn gave us a little information. As long as she's been here, they've been working with us. So it may be as long as 30 years or better, but it's been quite a while. As per the last 3 years of this agreement, CSISD has been paying 75%. So you'll see either 75 or 100% referred to a little bit later in the presentation. But we've been paying 75% of each SRO's salary and 75% of vehicle and equipment costs for the last 3 years, as per our interlocal agreement. I think prior to that, I believe it was a 50-50 split even. The latest ILA expired at the end of this last school year, so about the end of May. That finished up as part of the 75% participation works with CSPD. At the end of May is when they end their year with us, so they don't have anything for the summer. So when negotiations commenced in July, I went over to sit down with Chief McCollum and Chief Couch about this, so we could start talking about re-upping our interlocal agreement for the next round. We were notified that they would be phasing out of the SRO business, but they did agree to give us 1 year to transition to whatever SRO situation we wanted to develop. And the good news is they agreed to provide whatever assistance we might need to help us out with that transition, interaction with any other entity, or transition to whatever we might want to go to. And they did agree to an extension of the old interlocal agreement for 1 more year, the year we're in right now, at the same 75% participation level. So when we brought that back to Cabinet, we had a pretty good conversation about that, is what kind of options do we want to chase from here. And really they kind of fell out into one of 2 options. One of them that CSPD was encouraging would be to establish our own independent school district police department. And they felt like that would be a good solution for that. And then the other, well, and I'll say before we can even consider the other option, we did discuss this quite a bit and decide that we might use that as a fallback option, but not as our first option, because it would be quite a bit more costly. We would have to hire a chief of police. We'd have to set up some office space for them above and beyond the SROs at the campuses. So we decided to kind of hold that one as a fallback option. Second option really was to coordinate coordination with different local law enforcement agencies to see if anyone would be willing to provide SROs to our campuses. So we kind of reached out, I did, to a couple of these different entities really at the same time. Reached out to Brazos County Sheriff's Office, Texas A&M Police Department, and Bryan Police Department. And really the one that came back that didn't close the door on us pretty quickly was Brazos County Sheriff's Office, and which really takes me to really the remainder of our presentation tonight. As introduced to you before, Chief Deputy James Stewart came in, met with me, and we discussed just kind of the big picture stuff, the feasibility of this concept. I did share with Chief Stewart a copy of our current interlocal agreement with the city, so they'd kind of have a rough idea of where we stand right now, kind of the rules that we play by with the CSPD. And he then took that information, met with the sheriff and the county judge and some other folks to see if it would be feasible or not with them. And apparently they didn't balk at it. So Chief Stewart came back and we talked about it just a little bit more, and he agreed to work up a proposal for us. So after we took that step, I got out of Chief Stewart's way, and he did his research, checked some stuff out, interviewed principals of our campuses. I believe he interviewed with Dr. Martinez, Gwen Elder, and some others. Went over and visited with the CSPD folks just a little bit, kind of see what their thoughts were, and visited all of the campuses that would require a school resource officer. And ultimately, Chief Stewart developed the opinions on manning, equipment, and budget that he put into a proposal for our consideration. So far, so good? So far, so good. Good. Okay, so it's probably important to note really at the beginning of this that the comparison between our old deal and what the Brazos County Sheriff's Office is proposing. So I just wanted to put this slide. The biggest difference is we would be changing for what we currently have now, which is 4 SROs, and we're paying the 75% participation, as I mentioned earlier. And you can see the 4 campuses where they're assigned right now, with the notable difference being College View High School and A&M Consolidated Middle School right now share a single SRO. So the Brazos County Sheriff's Office proposal is for 5 SROs we would be asked to pay 100% of their costs, which would, by the way, include all the way through the summer. So if we did have any summer programs or training or any of that kind of stuff, that would be covered during the summer as well. And it would be split out on those 5 campuses. The only thing that would be different is that College View High School and Indian Consolidated Middle School would each have their own individual SRO in this proposal. Once again, this is all a point we could negotiate later, but that's the proposal on the table right now. So what this means as far as dollars, I think is a key piece to all of this. We've got 2 pieces of the puzzle. One of them is the current year budget, the one we're in right now that we've already started, 2016-17. It's important to kind of understand how this would be during this transition. So the proposal would be for one SRO sergeant to join us in approximately March of 2017 through the end of the year, which would be 9/30/17. So for that partial piece of the year, for that SRO sergeant, that cost would be $48,513. The 4 SRO deputies would come on a little bit later. We're looking at July of 2017 to bring them on so they could really learn the campuses, the layouts, stuff like that during that kind of that tail end of the summer. They would be at $18,265 a piece for this partial year, times 4 of them. That's extends out to $73,060. So long and short of it is the staffing costs for the current year we're already in would be $121,573. So that's the staffing piece. Then you've got the equipment piece for the current year, which is a little bit different. And that's kind of an upfront cost that you pay for once, and then you've got it from then on, I say, for years afterwards. So current transition year only, once again, we would be expected to, as per this proposal, to provide funding for 5 fully equipped law enforcement vehicles, which the Brazos County Sheriff's Office prefers these V6 Dodge Chargers fully equipped. You can see the extension there for $225,000, as well as the individual equipment for 5 officers. You can see how they list out and extend over for their body armor, handheld radio, taser, body camera, and miscellaneous other equipment. So when you tally that all up to the right and down to the bottom of the sheet, that's a total equipment cost for the current year that we're in right now of $258,000. So adding those 2 together for this year would be a cost of $379,573 to our current budget. Okay, so after we get past the current year, then we have the first full year. That would be starting 2017-18. That would be a full year of staffing with all 5 officers, which is $378,666, as well as an ongoing vehicle maintenance for all 5 vehicles of $15,000, and training for the 5 officers of $6,000. So you can see that tallies up to just under $400,000 for the 2017-18 year. That's what's in the proposal. Now, it's probably important to understand not only what the proposal is, but how it impacts our budget. So I've added this for the current year. The total of the Brazos County Sheriff's Office proposal is $379,573. We really won't have any of our current school resource officer budget available. We're going to be using that all the way through the end of May, so we can't tap that one anywhere. So really this would be an add, if we were to agree to it, of $379,573 for the 2016-17 budget. It's a little different the first full year, next year, in that you've got the Brazos County Sheriff's Office proposal for $399,666, but we would not be using the CSPD budget anymore. We would have that available. And so that's $261,438. So you can see the impact would be a little less in the 2017-18 year because we wouldn't be paying anything to CSPD. So, does that make sense? I've tried to make that as clean as I could there. So pretty straightforward, I think. So I just did want to hit one slide for future SROs. We've got the question coming up about middle school number 3 is coming up at some point, and exactly how we man that. A couple of different ways we could do that. spread the 5 and have one over or pick up another one. But in any case, the cost would be reviewed and negotiated at that time. If that's 2 years from now, it would cost, one amount, but if it were 10 years, it'd be a little bit different. So I did want to just kind of give you a rough breakout of generally what that would be. Baseline salary cost for a deputy, we're assuming we wouldn't be replacing a sergeant at that point, but that would be $73,055. And you can see kind of how it goes down. One more vehicle, one more, equipment cost for personnel. And I really just put in there adjustments for increased cost and inflation to be determined, because it really kind of is a factor of what year that is and how much inflation and how much more vehicles cost and stuff. But generally speaking, it'd be about $125,000 plus a little bit probably. So, fair to say? So really tonight, I want to just run it past y'all briefly. No formal action is required, but I did want to just run it past y'all to see if make sure that y'all feel like we're headed the right direction. If we are, the final details and adjustments would be made, and we would put that into an interlocal agreement that we would that would be drafted to formalize this agreement, and we'd bring that back to y'all in a couple of months. I would guess the quickest we could probably scramble this together probably be by the December school board, assuming everything went pretty quickly and smoothly. But no formal action required other than tonight, other than to say, kind of give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if y'all wanted me to keep proceeding with this. So with all that, do we have any questions or comments?
So I guess I've got just a couple. So y'all's broad take is that this is in the long run significantly cheaper for us, less expensive. I don't want to infer in any way that law enforcement is cheap, but a less expensive proposition as opposed to forming our own, in essence, our own police department.
I think it would be slightly less expensive, and it does a couple things. One, it's fundamentally the mission of a school district is to educate children, and fundamentally the role of a sheriff's office is law and order and public service and protection. And I think it keeps that role with the professionals and really allow us to rely upon their expertise. I think that's probably the best way to go, and I think it would save us some overhead costs in regards to that. Yes.
How long would this agreement be for? I mean, obviously that's negotiable, but
It's
what's
negotiable.
our idea?
My idea would be to have a multi-year agreement, probably in the 3 years plus or minus range, just so that we don't have to go through all of this rigmarole every year. Just kind of get a broad strokes of that. And then if we have to expand or contract based on additional campuses, have language in there. Probably have some severability language in there too, a little bit different than we've had in the past.
Absolutely. So I guess the last thing that popped in my mind was, can one of you give us like a ballpark of exactly what an SRO's responsibilities are? How does this mean that they are on our school campuses nonstop every school day? Do they have extended duties at different times? Are they on call to go to different campuses where they're not necessarily housed? To just kind of give us a broad, since we've had this agreement, obviously I haven't been on a board at a point where we've had a conversation. I mean, I know that they're there, but about exactly what they do. So if you could just give us kind of a
Sure, Dr.
broad
Mustafa.
take on it.
I think that's good. So let me just kind of go back to our current agreement. The school resource officer program or idea is about community building and working with students and getting to know them on the front end and helping to develop those relationships and help on down the road. So they're not there to process tardies or make sure the cafeteria lines are straight or do any of those house rules. They are there to be a resource for the community and a resource for the police department. And they are not the ones that are usually putting arresting folks and taking them downtown. Usually those are other officers who come in and do that for us. So yes, they do work when they work a football game or a volleyball game or a dance. They're hourly employees, and so they have overtime for that. In the same way they would generate overtime if they were working, on a regular beat and they pulled overtime in regards to that. So it's really the evolution of that program has changed in the last 10 or 15 years to be not one of you're putting a police car out in front to deter bad guys and having people walk around as far as being a big deterrent type of thing, but more of a relationship building, proactive measure. So
But they are obviously there for a safety purpose as well. If something goes wrong.
they are armed, and they are the tip of the spear if something should happen. They are the first responders, and they will call them in. Brazos County Sheriff's Office works with the College Station Police Department and other local law enforcement agencies with mutual aid agreements. So if something were to happen, we would still have CSPD coming in to aid in an emergency situation, and none of those things would be changing.
These 5 would be at 2 big high schools, all 3 middle schools, and then we'd continue to have a kind of a half share between College View and AMCMS.
That's still to be determined, but
Okay.
we would have coverage at our middle schools and our high schools, both comprehensive and College View, our choice high school.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. I guess the way I'm going to say it is how appreciative I am of the Brazos County Sheriff's Office and how they see the ability here to work together for the good of our community and our taxpayers. So for that, I'm very appreciative of the Sheriff's Office. And that's how I'm going to say that.
It's well said. Yeah, it was a good way of saying that.
When we talk with our principals, how is the presence of an RSO important in their daily lives? I mean, obviously there was some communication with the principals when we were talking about making this transition, and so perhaps you can just give us a little bit of insight on, how helpful they are to the principals, because those of us sitting up here all have SRO stories from our children, hopefully all just good community relations building, but there could be some others. But can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'd like to just start off on that. I think it's important for all of our kids to be able to have an adult at their school, especially their secondary school, that they can approach. Oftentimes it's a teacher. For many of our kids, it's either an assistant principal, a principal, or a counselor. But for some of our kids, it's a school resource officer, and they connect, and they connect on a different level, and they're willing to go and speak with them and let them know about issues that are going on in the community or at the school or in their own particular life. And I think having school resource officers in our campuses allows another opportunity for our kids to connect with important authority figures in the community. And they can, and they can work through, other issues that are happening in the community that affect kids in our schools from time to time.
Any other questions? The only thing I would say is if we were to go forward on this, I think it would be important that the multi-year agreement be at least 3 years or longer, because this is a pretty substantial initial cost, and I think that to change the community relationship building just doesn't happen just because someone's there. I mean, it's one of those, that first semester everybody's going to be kind of figuring each other out, and so you want to be certain that there's some continuity for both the officers' comfort level, but also for the students as well. So, as well as not having to go through another startup or reevaluation of what we should do. I think Mr. Harris is right on when he says we are very appreciative of the Sheriff's Office for being willing to evaluate whether or not you're interested in working with the school district, because it is important that the students do have more role models in their lives, and some of them don't have the benefit of as many as perhaps we would like to have them have.
Yes, ma'am. I would certainly agree. It's a significant startup cost for this, but it's an important thing. It's an important thing to have school resource officers in our schools for both the public safety and security aspect, as well as developing good, healthy relationships. So.
Yeah, but they're also driving neater cars than the CSPD, so that was good too. Yeah, that's important if you're a kid.
Do we get to put property of CSISD on those cars? free school board member rides and stuff like that, so.
That might be a benefit you're not entitled to. Here's your sandwich.
Oh, well, I'll take the sandwich.
Anything else? Well, thank you for your time in laying that out to us, and we look forward to hearing the next presentation on the subject. So thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
With that, we're going to be adjourned, and we will come back
6:30.
at 6:30.
6:30 and 6:45.